one modality took me from a 25 to 35% success rate to 75 and 85% success rate. You have congested lymphatic fluid, like I said, it can get as thick as butter or cottage cheese, and in some cases fibrotic. You'll feel hard lymph nodes and hard areas. Then it doesn't function properly. So your immune system is very compromised at that state.
Welcome, everybody. It's Richard Fluke here, guiding Healing energetically, and I'm with Dr. Jennifer Gramith, or Dr. Jen, and she is incredible, absolutely incredible. What she doesn't know about lymphatic drainage or working with the lymph. We have two different types of system, blood system and the lymph system. She'll explain lots more of that, I'm sure. She's a naturopathic doctor, was originally a nurse. She's from the United States, and you'll get to understand so much more about her. I met her at the Academy of Integrative Medicine when we used to train in Dallas, in Texas. I don't know whether we're still training there with Dr. Lee Cowden, Jennifer. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're still doing the online training now. So yeah, it's
Right.
great.
Okay, so I need to get involved with that. Again, had this sort of sabbatical for 4 years. As I was writing this, and Dr. Jen is going to be in the second, or the update that I'm just about to do. The reason why is I lost contact, and then on another podcast with Dr. Rebecca Garcia, she said, "You need to speak to Jennifer." And I went, "Really? Oh, give me her number." So this is how we've reconnected. And it's so wonderful to have you here on this call. And just tell me, what have you been up to? Because it's been, almost 5 years, hasn't it, since we last met?
Yeah. It's interesting because there's been a lot happen in the 5 years. I was thinking about that last night. How long has it been since Richard and I have seen each other? And I just so miss our community at ACIM, getting together and just all these like minds sharing their knowledge. It was a beautiful thing and still is. So, yeah, we're still doing workshops. We're doing a lot of workshops virtually. There's another one coming up in September. And so they're online and in person too, at different locations across the US. So maybe you can do one in your area for ACIM. Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to. Yeah, I'm now in France, which sort of is quite interesting. But yeah, I'd love to. I'm going to get involved with that. I'll speak to Dr. Lee Cowden, who will get on, who are on another podcast. But more about you. I
Right,
think.
right. So I have a practice here in Woodstock, Georgia, and then, I'm known for my research and work on the lymphatic system and the development of the inert gas ionization device to stimulate lymph flow and boost the immune system. And really, Richard, over the last several years, there's been a huge spotlight on the lymphatic system and the immune system and how it works together. So I've been spending a lot of time educating the communities all over. I work with practitioners all over the country, helping them to test clients and put them on protocols. My specialty is oncology. As you know, it was oncology when I was in nursing. I worked in oncology, cardiology, and internal medicine. And, you've heard my story, how I transitioned from mainstream medicine into functional medicine. I'm a naturopath. I'm a functional medicine practitioner through FMU. And, I've continued to just educate myself on a daily basis on the importance of fasting and anything that builds your body, because to me, in my heart, with what we went through in the world over the last few years, is that instead of waiting till people are stage 4 cancers, or they're in, the hospital with cardiac arrest, or they're type 2 diabetes and their body is just rotting. And at that point, it's like resurrecting the dead. You just got to really work really, really hard in saving that life. Why don't we work more on the front end of really educating the people how to protect themselves? I've been teaching optimal lab studies where I teach not the doctors per se, but the patients and how to interpret the labs. What labs do you need to run? Because, people walking into the hospital in a cardiac arrest, 75% of them have normal labs and normal vitals. And so how can that be with all of the technology that we have, all the science that we have? How can we not prevent cardiac arrest? And why are the patients going to the doctor and saying, "Oh, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine"? Well, it's because that's based upon the standard lab range, which is based upon the population that we have. And the population we have today has 1 to 4 disease processes. That's considered normal. Well, that's not the normal I want to be. I'm sure it's not the normal you want to be. We want to be in optimal levels. And so teaching people how to read their labs for the optimal levels will help them to identify when they're trending towards a disease process, whether it's due to deficiency or toxicity, it doesn't matter. You'll see that trend and you can correct it then. That is the only way that we can prevent people from going into spiraling down these chronic disease paths way early in their life and suffering, in my opinion.
Well, and the problem is, as soon as you get into those very heavy duty disease processes, you're then trapped in the medical pill for an ill or situation where it can become very, very tricky. But first, can we go back to why you got involved with this? Because you talked about being a nurse and working in oncology. Can you share some of that story? I mean, it's obviously
So
personal.
back, one of my favorite stories to share. So, when I was in my early 20s, got out of school and became a nurse. And you have such aspirations when you're young and you're 20. And I was so excited to be able to serve my community. And I just went out with the attitude, I'm going to save the world. Oh, I'm going to save lives. This is going to be great. And so, I am so appreciative of my education and what I learned. But when I got out into the real world, and especially when I worked in oncology, was the time that my father was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. My father was in his late 40s when he was first diagnosed. He was a crop duster and had the chemical sprayed directly on him while working on an airplane. And then, of course, he sprayed it every day as part of his job. And that's what his oncologist said was the cause of his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had tumors the size of grapefruit in his abdomen, like oranges under his arms. And he was stage 4 when he was diagnosed. He was stage 4 cancer. And they did chemo. Of course, that's all I knew to do. I thought we were doing the very best, treatment for him. And I had so much confidence in it. But then after about a month, he had aged like 20 years in that month's period from getting chemotherapy and radiation. And they came to us and said, no more. His heart can't withstand it. Mr. Gardner, you just need to go home and get your affairs in order. And I was completely devastated. How could this be? How could I be a nurse, but I can't help my father? And my medical director could see that I was so heartbroken. And he took me aside and he said, "Jennifer, why don't you try alternative medicine?" Back then is what it was referred to. And I knew nothing about it. I thought all of that was just crazy. If I didn't learn it in medical school, it can't be valid type of attitude. And he said he had a friend who had cured himself of a brain tumor, Jim Hankstepper. And he had a little herb shop in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is close to my hometown. And take my father to him, see what he could do. So I really didn't have any faith that that was going to work, because I was just really driven more medically. But I didn't have any other options either. My father was given a death date, 2 months. That was his death date. And we went. I was so impressed with this man who had cured himself of a brain tumor that was a very rare and untreatable in allopathic medicine. And he was about 20 years in remission. He never had a reoccurrence. And to this day, he's never had a reoccurrence. We stay in touch. And I took my dad to him, and he put him on all these supplements that I knew nothing about. It was things like SCIT and Partiarco and all the things that we used to use and still use today. And I just went home and prayed, and he lived past his death date, which was amazing and shocking to me. And then 6 months later, the tumors were half their size. A year later, he was cancer free. And meanwhile, Richard, I was still working in oncology, and I'm watching my dad thrive and get better and better. I'm watching my patients get weaker and weaker, and I was torn apart. I would sit up at night researching and crying and trying to figure out, what am I going to do with this. And I think a lot of practitioners get to that point when we have that personal story. We have to make a decision. And my decision was that I wanted to help people overcome these challenges in a less invasive, more natural way that now, because of watching my father, I knew was possible, and was just a much better quality of life. And so I've devoted the last 25 years of my life, continuing to learn, research, and help people. So that's what I do.
And it's very true. I have a client at the moment. She's doing lots of alternative therapeutic interventions, as they were known, and she's still working. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. She looks a picture of health. She's got loads of energy, and it's just incredible to see her go through all this amazing journey. No chemotherapy, no radiotherapy. And I don't see that of my other clients who decide to go down the other route. And I've got one particular person that comes to mind. She's been out of work for a year and a half, and done the traditional she hasn't done radiotherapy, but chemotherapy. And even after she was given the all clear, they still said, "Oh no, you need to take this another 6 months of this oral chemo." And not good. No, certainly not good at all. But that's the way that particular model works. Let's go a little bit further on, because as you mentioned earlier, you've become the go-to knowledge-based person, trainer, not through trying to do that. It's just happened, hasn't it? I do know that. For working with lymphatic drainage, with lymphatic therapies. And I'll put a picture up of the specialist device that you use, and you may mention that, so that people see it. And I know in the video with Dr. Marlene Siegel, she uses it on the pets, and there's a picture of her actually doing that on draining the lymph, which I know she learned from you. So,
Right.
yeah, but tell people a little bit more about why that's important, what it does, and sort of the theory, and how you would do that. I think they're just, people just have got no clue that this even exists.
Right. That's so true. Well, it's interesting because you're right. None of my career was really planned out. Like I didn't plan to transition from nursing to naturopath. And then once I became a naturopath and started working with a lot more cancer patients, typically, they come to us after mainstream has failed. So they're in stage 4 cancer. They're not just in stage 4 cancer, they're very broken because of the chemotherapy, radiation, and it's a very hard place to be. And so I got to a point back when I first started that I had about a 35% success rate with stage 4 cancers, which is excellent compared to chemotherapy radiation rates, okay, which is less than 8% usually. Most of the therapies is less than 4%. Now, some of the immunotherapies look a little bit better than that, but, just typical chemo and radiation just wasn't cutting it. So I was doing better, but it still wasn't enough for me because you develop close relationships with these patients coming in to see you, and you want to save, it's just like with my father, I want to save everybody. And I kept feeling like I was hitting a brick wall. And I called Dr. Cowden and I'm like, Dr. Cowden, what am I doing wrong? I get them, they start off really well, and then they just like crash and burn. And he said, well, Jennifer, are you addressing their lymphatic system? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm giving them homeopathics and we've got them on some herbal tinctures. And I kid you not, Richard, when I say I did not learn anything hardly about the lymphatic system in medical school. And your doctors don't know either unless they specialize in that. Today, we had a chapter on the lymphatic system, and every other system of the body we had a textbook on. So it's a big, deficit in knowledge. And so I really didn't understand what he was talking about when he asked me that. I knew I gave homeopathic drainers and things like that, but it just wasn't cutting it. Many of my patients were coming in with full body edema from treatment, lymphedema. I saw lipedema cases. I saw a lot of fibrosis, and it was just very challenging. And so he said, well, I think you need to be more aggressive with the lymphatic work. And he sent me a machine that was from Australia, an inert gas ionization machine. And I flew up to Texas, met with Dr. Thomas Crowley, and he taught me how to use this weird looking machine on my patients. And I went back and I started utilizing that. And lo and behold, I was shocked at the difference. So it took me, the one modality took me from a 25 to 35% success rate to 75 and 85% success rate with cancer stage 4. And then I started using it with autistic children and getting great results with that. I used it with Lyme patients. And so I soon realized the impact that the lymphatic system has in your overall healing. Your lymphatic system is the structure that holds your immune system. So if you're going to direct or you're going to stimulate your immune system, it has to be by way of the lymphatic system. And most of us walk around with congested lymphatic systems because of all of our environmental burdens, the emotional stress, which you know very much about, and how that can shift the fluid from a watery state like this, which it should be, to fit through the collectors very easily because these are tiny, tiny collectors, to a state of butter or even cottage cheese where you just feel stuck. And your emotions can have that, your stress levels can have that happen within 10 minutes of an emotional event.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that because
Yeah.
I think what most people are probably unaware of, and have mentioned it, is that your work in this field is just on a different level from other people even doing lymphatic drainage therapy. And I wasn't aware either that you went from a 25%, 40% up to a 75% success rate. That's insane. That is absolutely incredible. Anyway, there we are. And I think we're also so there's a good reason why I'd like to know a little bit more of the theory behind what you're doing. So I'll put up a picture of the rods that you're doing, but you can actually also do lymphatic drainage yourself. We learned that at the ACIM. So it might just be worthwhile giving people a little bit more of a how in a moment, but just a bit more of the theory behind what's truly going on, because I know we learned that the lymph has little nodes, and you can't, it's not like when you're doing a massage you're going right into the muscle or something,
Right.
or into the fascia. You're doing something else. And what is it, in a
Right.
nutshell, that you would probably tell a client? uh
Yeah. That's a great question. And a lot of, most people don't know that too. So yeah, your lymphatic system, it piggybacks your circulatory system. So it's, if your circulatory system's a closed system, it piggybacks it, dumps into the blood. That's how it empties out through the kidneys. That's why you urinate frequently after lymphatic. So when you do regular manual massage, you're just moving congested lymph to the area of the lymph node or the duct. So the lymph nodes are designed to encapsulate a lot of your white blood cells. It's kind of like your battlefield. And so you have the majority of your white blood cells is going to be the lymph. Now, when we look at, levels of white blood cells like lymphocytes and, basophils and things like that, we're looking at it in the blood, which is just a small amount that's in the blood. Most of it is in the lymphatic system because it is where your immune system lies. It's where you do the battle. And so these toxins, whether they're, environmental or there's just excess of hormones dumped because you're under a lot of stress and you're triggering cortisol levels, it's going to be filtered through that lymph node. And when it comes through the lymph node from the collector or vessel, it goes into the lymph node. The lymph node then will swell when the pathogen is identified. And because it will just flood in there and it will destroy that pathogen and break it down, and it'll move out of that lymph node into another, and it goes through this filtration process until it's dumped back into the thoracic duct, which is dumping into the cardiovascular system, taking it to the kidneys for elimination. And so when you have a congested lymphatic fluid, like I said, it can get as thick as butter or, cottage cheese. And in some cases, fibrotic, you'll feel hard lymph nodes and hard areas, um, then it doesn't function properly. So your immune system is very compromised at that state, because it's kind of like, Richard, if you're getting on the highway and there's a ton of cars, it's a ton of traffic, and you're an emergency vehicle and there's a wreck up here in, 2 miles down the road, you can't, as the emergency vehicle or your white blood cell, you can't get to the scene of the accident fast enough. And so it just worsens. So infection will just kind of spread in the body because the immune system can't get there, because the lymphatic system is the transport highway for the immune system. And so the difference between manual acts absolutely is very beneficial, but it only addresses the superficial lymphs directly underneath the skin, which 70% of your lymphatic system is superficial. But in that 30%, that is the deeper lymphs, mostly in the gut, that is where your immune system is. So if you really truly want to stimulate your immune system, you have to get deep. So manual helps with the superficial. You'll get some benefit, but most people have a deeper problem. And that's where we use the devices like the XP2, which is inert gas ionization. It uses frequency, light, and sound to not just move congested lymph, but dissolve the lymph from the butter back to a watery state, so it easily flows through and it gets those white blood cells where they need to be.
I've had it done by you.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
amazing. The other thing I think that people need to understand, and perhaps I'll get a video of, I don't really have a video of you doing it, but certainly people doing it. And I think that that's something that I think people need to know is a bit more about how is it done? Because I know, for example, women who've had breasts removed, and of course, then they remove the primary lymph node as well. They're always checking for cancer and that. They say it's cancerous. I'm not totally convinced by that. It's more, it's completely blocked and it's full of just gum because
Right.
it's trying to drain whatever's going on inside the breast. And they enlarge and they say that it's cancerous. Uh, but it's maybe that's another question for a moment. But you'll often see women, say, for example, they had the left breast removed, lots and lots of lines and scars where the surgeon has removed that. And that means then the arm doesn't block, it can't drain and the arm swells up. So they often have this lymphatic drainage. But tell people exactly what happens. So someone's coming to see you, they've had a diagnosis maybe before, and then perhaps clients that have had the surgery and the lymphatic stuff. So what's the general protocol? What goes on? How does it work? Because people are unaware. Do I stand up? Do I sit down? Do I have to, what
Do you have to
actually really
be
goes on?
naked or what? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, so yeah, there's a lot of fear behind some therapies, and this is very non-invasive, but it's kind of like getting a massage. You do disrobe because you want to really get, especially with women, we definitely want to work on the mammary glands, but everything's covered, so you're not exposed. But we do a full body lymphatic treatment, which is different than manual lymphedema treatments where they just really work the involved area. We do full body treatment, which is very, very important to treat the whole lymphatic system, not just parts of it. And it's very relaxing. That uses argon and krypton gases, which is the gases that, when excited, will dissolve the congested lymph. But then they added xenon because xenon, when it's excited and placed to the skin, the xenon gas actually helps to balance your hormones. So it's kind of your feel good gas. It's like a big dopamine, push, and you just kind of feel calm and happy. And that's one thing people say after the therapy, they just feel really good. It dissolves inflammation, just like it dissolves congestion. And so it helps with a lot of pain. But it takes about an hour to do the full body. If you have an involved area, like you have lymphedema, it may take an hour and a half session to really work on that. And that was something, Richard, because I'm a lymphedema specialist, so I'm manually trained. I know how to do bandaging and all of that. And doesn't mean that I never do that, but I try not to because most patients are not compliant with that. They don't want to be wrapped up in all of these, bandages for days on end and then be stuck in a compression garment the rest of their life. So we were able to use this device on these clients and not have to do bandaging or compression for the lymphedema, and they can live a normal life. You probably know a good friend of mine, Kelly Gallagher, who was one of the producers for VAC. She's a five-time cancer survivor, powered by her, I can't remember how many pacemakers, because she actually was not diagnosed with hemochromatosis in time, even though her ferritin levels were in the thousand. And she had a heart attack. And Dr. Calden sent her to me for the lymphedema that she had in her leg, and that's how we met. And so she hated wrapping and bandaging, and so she was super excited when she found that there was something that she could do. She would come to my office initially and get it done, but then she purchased her own equipment and she does it herself. So, it's a wonderful modality and tool that I think that every functional practice should have, because it not only helps with decreasing inflammation, which is what we're all battling. I mean, inflammation we know is the problem, but what causes that inflammation is how we fix the problem. But people want symptom relief. too. So this helps with the symptom relief until you can identify what the problem is and correct it. And so, it'll increase if you're doing chelation or you're doing other types of nutritional protocols and you're having issues with your patient's absorption and circulation of those nutraceuticals, this will increase it. I saw it first with the autistic children. It took them from, I don't know if you've ever worked with autistic children,
Yeah, I have.
but the DAN protocol is intensive. And, their guts shredded, they're not absorbing anything. So no wonder they're taking massive amounts of these nutraceuticals to get any absorption. So when I started working with them, it was amazing. We were able to cut down the protocol 50 to 70% and get better absorption because they were doing the assisted lymphatic therapy along with the protocol, which was amazing to me. And so that was when I first noticed, wow, this really increases the absorption of the other things that we're doing.
And that would make some sense because if we understand, as you mentioned, the way the lymphatics if they're all blocked, basically, let's just say that word, that's not technically correct. But if there's no absorption and it can't do its job, then the bowels particularly can't actually absorb the food that's coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes a lot of sense. Going back a little bit further, I'm also going to mention something that you mentioned, which is chelation. Chelation is a way that we can add certain things to the body to pull out heavy metals. So that's just one particular comment that people might not understand fully. Going on a little bit further to the process that you talk about, because I think people won't understand. I will put up a video on this, but you have sort of big long tubes that are like light bulbs but slightly smaller, and they've got the argon gas in there. They have I must have some electrical outside something on there, because as you're putting these devices on, you're slowly brushing along the lymphatic area, and as you mentioned, you feel really good as it's happening, and it's like a massage, but it's not like I'm being a man, I like a really good deep massage. It's not like that. It's a gentle brushing, and it doesn't hurt. There's no sort of, oh, it's electrical or anything. You hear a sort of buzzing, but it's very minor, so you're not sitting there freaking out or anything. And it's around here, it's around the whole of the body, as
Right.
you're getting right into the major lymph nodes and actually the deeper lymph nodes. And as you said, you come out of that and you're quite very relaxed, and then you naturally let go of a lot of excess water, which is just the lymph nodes pushing into the kidney and letting that go out. So, anything you else you want to add to that?
Yeah, yeah. So the treatment is very, like I said, very relaxing, just kind of like getting a massage, but even deeper. And the detox from that lasts for 48 hours. So you have frequent urination for 48 hours after the therapy. You don't see that with the manual. You do have some, but not as much as you do with the assisted lymphatic therapy. Also, we think of the lymphatic system as the detox system. It's the garbage, taking out the trash, taking out the trash. And that is true. It is our detox system. But what people don't understand too, is it bathes every cell in the body with nutrients. So when you have a congested lymphatic system, you're going to be malnourished because you're not able to circulate the nutrients that are released from the small intestines once you digest. Most of us have digestive issues anyway. So we're unable to break it down to a small enough molecule to where it's absorbed in the small intestine. Well, it picks up in the small intestine, goes into the lymph and into the blood. And so when you are stagnant, when the lymph is thick and stagnant, it cannot get absorbed or taken into the cell. I was listening to a great podcast and it was talking about, hormone replacement therapy. All these people, I got to fix my hormones, hormones, hormones. And it's all about giving them hormones. Well, that's only one part of it, because if you cannot get the hormone broken down to a molecule that will be able to go into the cell, then it doesn't, you can pump people with hormones all day long. We see this with insulin. When a person is insulin resistant and they're eating sugary food and their blood glucose is going up and their pancreas is like overzealous and pushing out all of this insulin, but the receptors on the cell isn't working. The insulin is not connecting properly to open up the glucose store to let the glucose come in. Then what you're doing is building up more and more insulin, and then your body panics and it has to store it in your adipose tissue, and then you gain weight. And it's just an inflammatory, cytokine storm in your body. And we see this, so it's the same thing, same principle. You can't keep pumping estrogen, testosterone, progesterone into your body if you can't utilize it. And the toxins are the things that really gum up the receptor sites of the cells. I'm huge on fasting, because in 6 hours of a water fast, men's testosterone quadruple. It takes a little longer for women, but we don't need as much testosterone, but it helps our estrogen and progesterone levels. So you can actually reset your hormones by doing, these types of therapies and incorporating some fasting in your lifestyle and learning how, when's the right time to do it and when's the wrong time to do it and stuff like that. But there's just so much benefit. There's so much I can tell you just from, doing it for 25 years on the types of patients. I really struggled. I don't know if you see a lot of Lyme patients, but I really struggled with, in my early years with Lyme. And because they are so complex. I mean, it is like cancer, because cancer is a complex. It's not one illness. It's a combination of all kinds of things gone wrong in the body. Lyme is like that too. Their symptoms are so weird and unusual in every case. It's not like everybody's the same. You can treat them all the same. You can't do that. We don't do that anyway in functional medicine, but they were really challenging until I started implementing the assisted lymphatic therapy, cutting down the inflammation, increasing the absorption, helping open up their detox pathways. It was critical, and it's made a big difference in those clients as well.
I know with Lyme, I've had a couple of Lyme patients and they've just been so tricky because you do one thing and it just knocks something else out. You do that and you knock something else out, and they're just battling from one side to the other. And it really is, you need someone who knows what they're doing, has a lot of experience. I mean, certainly the emotional, stressful side helps, but it isn't the major solution. I want to just talk a little bit about something else you did mention. You have you were talking about insulin, you were talking about glucose levels and wearing some form of glucose monitor, which you found very useful. And you talked about a Dr. Jen, you said a Dr. Jen food protocol or
Gut
diet.
repair program. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it called?
Dr. Jen's gut repair program. It's a program I put together to really teach people how to, transform their own body, because now they have the information that they need to know what their body is doing. As a practitioner working with so many people I work with local clients, but I have clients all over the world, and in different cultures and different locations, they have different issues. And so I really wanted to put together something where they could learn about their body and how to monitor their body. And I found that using the CGMs, which is the continuous glucose monitoring sensors, that just go right in your arm or in your belly, is a great way to help them to see the problem areas in their lifestyle. And, I've been doing it for going on 4 months now or 5 months, and it's been amazing because, as a practitioner, you think you know everything about yourself. Well, I mean, I thought for sure, I do all of this, we do e-box here, we do all this emotional work, and I'm like, I'm good, I'm not stressed, I can handle it. I realized that stress was more of a trigger for my high glucose than eating a piece of pie. And so it would, when I am and I discovered this when I was doing a water fast. So I like to do 36 hours of water fast a week and then occasionally 72 hours to reach autophagy and, replenish my cells and heal. But so I was in the 3-day water fast. So I had nothing to eat, nothing to eat. And I had a very stressful event, and my glucose shot up to diabetic levels
Wow.
with nothing, so that was really amazing to me. That and and I do have a stressful, job. So it really has helped me to be more mindful of taking care of myself. So when I see that I'm stressed and my blood glucose is trailing up, I know I need to stop. I need to do some deep breathing. I need to pray, meditate, whatever helps to decrease those stressors in me. And so that's worked. I also found out that if I exercised in the morning, it shot my glucose up. Ridiculous. Not just 10, 15 points, like 70 points.
Wow.
So stress would send it up 100 points, so it's not like it's just a few points, it's a huge amount of, inflammation. So that just equates to inflammation in your body when your blood glucose gets above optimal levels. And so I would try to always get up and go work out before I come into the office. And I knew that, I'd come in and I just would still feel tired, but I'll sometimes even just lightheaded. And it's not that I didn't eat. I usually had some kind of protein, like everything you're taught. But when I started monitoring myself, I realized that I should not be exercising in the morning. I need to do it in the evening because in the evening it had the opposite effect. If my glucose was a little elevated, it would bring it down. And so, isn't that interesting? I would have never known that had I not been watching and monitoring myself. And then I realized, I've been on a real heavy plant-based diet, probably most of my life. But I realized I needed more animal protein because that was what was blunting my glucose spikes when I would incorporate that. Doesn't mean I don't eat a lot of plants. I do. But I don't tolerate beans, legumes, or carbs well. I can have them if I eat them on the back end of my meal, which I discovered. So I can have them if I eat my fat, vegetables, and a little bit of protein, and then my carb. But if I eat my carb first, it shoots it up 70, 80 points.
Wow. So it's really getting to understand more about the like you said, your way of looking at food and controlling that glucose and the inflammation markers, etc., which you feel in your body because you can feel. I often wake up in the morning, I go, "What was I eating yesterday?" That I
Yeah.
go like that, and I go, "Oh, that's not good."
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's and we have a pretty great diet here. Living in France, it's we're right in the I suppose the food belt where there's lots of they call it biologique, but organic food producers,
Awesome.
great food, and it does taste fantastic. So we're very
Yeah.
lucky in that sense, and there's not too much glyphosate around here. There is some.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so this also helps. And And in the book, I talk about fasting a lot, and I love fasting. Little question for you: you ever come across a dry fast that's nil by mouth?
I have a friend who did a dry fast up in Chicago, and Dr. Keith Nimick, and he would do that periodically. I've never personally done a dry fast, but and I've looked a little bit into the research, but I don't know a whole lot about it. But he swears by it, but that's a little much for me, I think.
Well, it's a bit like, I guess, you get into doing some sort of weight training or something, and this is like
Yeah,
the getting to the extreme stuff.
pushing yourself. Yeah.
I'm not going to go into too much, but very interesting, very, very interesting, especially for rebuilding stem cells. Let's not focus on that. Let's just talk a little bit more about. So you talked about you have clients throughout the world, and if someone wanted to know a lot more about your work or work with you or anything else like that, so how might they just get in contact with you, and what sort of things do you do then, and what sort of things do you offer? Because you can't sit there with the lymphatic drainage work. You can't suddenly fly off to Saudi Arabia or something. Well, you might do because they might pay you enough, but
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. No, that's true. So here at my practice, I actually have I'm the chief practitioner, and then I really do a lot of mentoring. So I teach other practitioners, how to set up protocols for cancer and things like that. So people can reach me through, you can follow me at Dr. Jen, or Jennifer Gramith, Right Way Health and Wellness on Facebook. You can find our website at rightwayhealthandwellness.com. And then we're on Facebook, Instagram, and all of the social media platforms too. But uh, I do testing. So what we do here, Richard, typically a person calls in, they've been referred. You don't have to have a referral to come here, but they usually have been referred. They usually do a consult with me or one of the other practitioners. Usually the cancer ones come to me. All other ones go to the other practitioners here. And my team, we meet and we discuss their case, and then we set them up for testing. So I do the biofeedback testing through Zyto. I will also order labs typically, or have their doctor order labs for them. And I'm looking at things like, I told you earlier, 90% or 75% of the patients walking into the hospital with a cardiac arrest, that's their first symptom. And we don't want that. Heart disease is the number one killer, and cancer is right there next to it. And so we have to be able to see that they have a risk by doing more than just the standard cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglyceride tests. We need to look at the lipoprotein fractionation, which is the particle size. So that can all be normal. And then when you go deeper, you see, oh my gosh, they're at high risk because of the particle size of the cholesterol in their body. And so, helping people to understand what types of tests they need to order to monitor themselves, doing, like I said, the glucose sensor monitoring. I usually do that for a month with our clients to see, the first week they just do their regular diet so I can see how that's affecting them. And then we start to tweak it, and we, create a diet, not a diet, it's a lifestyle that will bring them to optimal levels in their health, mental health, and on their lab levels as well. So they will have the biofeedback test that can actually be sent to you, and you can test virtually. So you don't have to be in our office to be tested. I get all of your documents, we review, we put together a program for you. So that's what I do. So people can, contact my office and, have that done. I also do hosting, like we have the Dr. Jen's Gut Repair coming up again in April 20th. where it's a Facebook forum and you got a huge community doing all the same things. And that's where I have you get a couple of the glucose monitors because we're going to monitor you for a month. We're going to see what type of fasting works best for you. The first week is really intermittent fasting. So is it an 8 hour, 10 hour, 12 hour? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, if you're a male and you're trying to increase your testosterone levels, that's easily done. And you can do that in a shorter intermittent period. If you are trying to lose weight, then you may do a longer, fast to start burning up the adipose tissue. If you need it for gut repair, you may, do a 12-hour fast. It just depends on what you're trying to gain from this. And so this is a practitioner driven, without me having to see each one personally, it's done. We have weekly webinars where we meet. I teach you all about what it means to fast, what's happening in your body, what your glucose levels mean, where they should be. And then second week, we go into juice fasting, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I always get this. Oh, I can't do juice fasting because I'm a diabetic. And my doctor says that will shoot my glucose up and it won't be good for me. And I'm going to have to do a lot of insulin. And I said, well, let's just see. Because on average, and I have actually had no one that shot their blood glucose up. It keeps within the first week, they're in optimal ranges from 70 to 120.
Wow.
And that's all day long. Yeah. So they're not dropping low. They're not spiking high. And then they see such great improvement with that, then they're really actually excited about doing the water fast because people are fearful of water fast. They think they're going to starve to death and they're going to lose muscle, and they don't really understand the short fast like that. Like if it's a 1, 2, or 72 hour, fast, they're like, oh, I'm going to lose muscle. I'm going to lose muscle. Well, you tear down muscle when you exercise. You will lose a little bit of muscle on a 72, or you could not, most people don't. If you have a lot of adipose tissue, you're going to lose that first and then muscle. But even if you lose a little bit of muscle during that fasting cycle, when you start eating, if you break your fast properly, you're going to build muscle dramatically. So it's just kind of like, changing their mindset and understanding what is happening in my body. So then all the fear is gone and they're really excited about that. And it does transform their life because as much as I do that if we don't change their mindset about their health, then nothing really works for them. And so people have this belief that they aren't worthy or, they're suffering secretly. They're pushing things down. They're holding on to things that don't serve them. And so we really have to get to that mental, emotional, component of why they're where they are today. And I think there's always that story. That's why, Richard, I went back to school after, I guess, 4 years after being a naturopath. I went back to school to be a psychologist
Wow.
because I know, because I'm thinking all these people that with all these chronic diseases have emotional trauma and I didn't know how to address it. It's like, suck it up. You're okay. Just get over it. That was my mentality back then. And I realized that they can't. I had one lady who had these huge boils come up on her legs, on the insides of her legs and lower abdomen, and very painful. She would have to have them lanced and drained. She was in the service and she came in, we did the biofeedback testing, and the first thing that showed up was the contributing factor was an emotion. And so I ran through that and it was abandonment. And I said to her, I said, have you ever felt like you were abandoned? And she just went, hell. And I said, you don't have to tell me. I just want you to, think about it. Because I really wasn't ready to, her to tell me all this stuff. And she said, no, she said, actually, Dr. Jen, I um met a man when I was in the service after having my two children, and I left my children and my husband and ran off with him. And then he left me, and I never forgave myself for, leaving my children. She said, we've reconciled, but I've never forgiven myself. And it's interesting to me that where the boils were on the insides of her legs and close to her genitals. And, so that she just felt great shame and, with that. And so once we realized that, because prior to that, we had done blood purifiers, we had detoxed her whole body. They'd get better, but they'd always come back. They'd get better, they'd always come back. We went through about a year of that before we discovered this. And after that, they never came back.
I've worked with ladies with a similar type of situation as that, where they've very, very similar with the same type of problem, and cleared that up, and then the issue just disappears, which is just fantastic. Which just shows that if it shows up on the Zyto, which is biofeedback monitoring system, which is maybe I got a picture of that where you put your hand on it, and this can be read wherever you are in the world, which is fantastic. That if it shows up emotional, then you've got to deal with emotions, and those are fantastic when you can show that information. I think that's also very relevant to the glucose monitoring that you have, because with the glucose monitoring, what can happen is the client may not believe you what they're doing. So in other words, I don't need to change my diet. I don't need to stop eating that. Oh, I don't need to exercise. I'm not changing my routine of exercising in the morning. But then you suddenly see the glucose going up and ramping up like that. And you can say, well, what are you doing? Oh, well, and okay.
Exactly. It's really, it's kind of like your truth teller. I had a patient come in, and I said, hey, let me see your phone. I want to see your glucose readings for last week. And she's like hesitant, to give it to me. And I pick it up and I'm like, when are you going to stop feeding this cancer? And I said, look at this. This is diabetic, levels. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it really holds you accountable to that. And, when people drink alcohol, this is another issue with drinking too much, is that you'll drink alcohol in excess, or even just, anything over a glass would probably cause this to happen. But because the alcohol takes precedent over glucose, the liver pretty much shuts down its ability to release glucose into the bloodstream when needed. And so what happens is you eat your meal that has a lot of carbs and sugars, and it shoots your glucose up. And then your pancreas spits out all of this insulin. And most time people are insulin resistant. More than 70% of the population is insulin resistant. And so it's, your glucose starts to come down a little bit, but because it has such a drastic drop, so it goes up really high and then drops drastically, that's when the liver should kick in and release glucose, but it's processing all that alcohol because that's more damaging at that moment. And, you can go down to a 50. You can go from like a 200 down to a 50 and feel terrible. It can be very dangerous. And it's not, your glucose levels are going to go up and down, and it needs to be just a gradual heal. Okay. Most people, it is like a, roller coaster. You're up and you're down, you're up and you're down, you're up and you're down. And that creates a terrain in the body conducive to cancer, infection. That's why a lot of patients will get UTIs and gastrointestinal infections, because it is the perfect terrain for bacteria and pathogens to grow. And it's, just like cancer loves sugar, so do these other pathogens too. So if you have all of that in your blood, then it's a big beast for them. So you're just feeding your bugs. So you need to get a hold of, get get a grasp on that.
I think also just to understand the terrain, because this is very much an integrative medical way of looking at things, naturopathic medical way. Um, Let me just explain that very quickly. I explain it in the book, which I think is lovely. Is that, let's say a fish has a problem. So what do? We go in and give it antibiotics, give it steroids, maybe try and feed it a different food. No, you change the water. And that's that's the
Yeah,
terrain. So you change what's
yeah,
going on around it. 99% of the time, it'll be fine. So I think that that's the way that we can also look at it, and that's a really very simplistic way of
right,
understanding the terrain, which is what we're doing more often
right,
than not. We're saying, well, what are you eating?
right.
How much are you
Yeah,
drinking? I mean, it's someone with cancer. You should just be, that's a no-no. Of course, yeah, celebration once in a blue moon, fine.
right.
But yeah, and so you've really got to look after your body at that
Right.
particular point, because it does mess around your whole system. Anyway, we're digressing. Let's really just, is there anything else that you really want to just to add? I mean, your work is just incredible. I didn't know you'd gone even to another level. I love the whole glucose monitoring thing and really putting clients accountable. And the fact that when I first met you, you were doing a lot of work yourself. It seems to me that the whole practice has grown, and there were people sort of coming around to train with you and learn around the country, for example, from the US. Is there anything else? What's the plan for the future? What's happening?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. So yeah, we have grown. Like I said, I think it's because of the spotlight on the lymphatic system and the immune system. People are curious to, figure out what's wrong with them. That means, so looking at their lymphatic system, looking at their immune system. Um, I think, we do we're the manufacturers of the XP2. We do all of the training worldwide. And so now our training is 100% because of COVID, and all the shutdowns. We went 100% online. So you can train at any time all over the world, which is just a really blessing for us to be able, to offer it to more people. And so that has grown astronomically. We have it in over 17, actually, probably, I think Singapore added five more. So it's in the 20s, cancer clinics over in Asia.
wow.
And so, yeah, it's Dr. Thomas Lodi is the doctor who initially took it overseas and really started putting it in his clinics. And then there's a huge group in Singapore that's a lymphology group, and they have expanded now. They're working on their 10th, I think, clinic. So it is growing in popularity. We have about probably 1,500 therapists here in the US. We have some in Canada, a few in Australia. And so that there is an awareness now of the importance of the lymphatic system. We have it actually at Mount Sinai down in Florida in oncology department, because the head oncologist's wife had lymphedema after her breast cancer. And that was the only thing that really helped her. So she, pushed her husband into offering it for other patients. So it's something that I think is going to, move more in mainstream, but it is very, very effective. And it's not that, the manual for lymphedema is very effective, but patients just aren't compliant with it. So, if you have the choice of coming into your PT's office and getting wrapped every day for 2 weeks and then having to wear compressions for the rest of your life that are hot and uncomfortable and don't fit half the time, um, or get therapy once or twice a week for an hour and it feels like a massage. I mean, here, what are you going to choose? So it's just a no-brainer. So I think in the future, what I am gearing up to do is really more of the online group, you know, talk detox, like I'm doing the gut repair, and then I want to do a hormone reset. I want to teach people how to really become their own doctor and take control. I mean, it's fine if there are part of the population that is always going to be, I'm going to take a pill for every ill mentality, but I believe you can either take a pill for every ill, and that's not really going to benefit you that much, or you can take responsibility. And I want to work with the people that are ready to take responsibility of their health, because we're not victims. We have total control of what goes into our body, what goes into our mind. And, we've been caught in this culture, in this victim mentality, and we stay crippled and constrained, and we are not victims. We can become warriors. I listen to testimonies of people who have undergone amazing things, trauma that is just, I can't believe that you survive and come out with such a victor's mentality. Is such a beautiful thing to see. So if they can do it, you can do it, I can do it, and I just want to spread the message of hope, that there's always hope. Your situation is not hopeless. I don't care if you've been given a death date, just like my father. I don't, it is not hopeless. And we can, help you and assist you in finding out what your healing journey is.
And on that note, honestly, Jennifer, that was just amazing, fantastic, and wonderful to be able to listen and share your wisdom and your knowledge. And yeah, sends goosebumps down me just listening to you talk about this amazing work. Thank you
Good. Well,
so
you have
much.
to come visit me here in the States.
I'm gonna get back over to the States and have some fun, because I miss meeting everybody and being with you. And my future, I think, will be to just to show more of these wonderful therapeutic interventions and how people can go off and heal themselves. And because in my life I've collected a lot of these things and love them, absolutely love them. And maybe that's something else. I mean, that's basically a lot about the book, but also then dealing with this underlying stress, which is also my thing as well. So
Right.
anyway,
Are you
well
teaching
done.
any classes on that,
I
or?
am going to be very, very soon. It's all the protocols from here, which are brand new.
Yeah.
Really a lot of research in that. Came up with some new things that are just so wonderful to integrate with all sorts of other types of interventions. But less about me, more about you. So,
Well, I do have a lot of practitioners in our practitioner forum. Um, so it may be good for, sometime for you and I to do one to share what you do to them, because they're always trying to, increase their tools in their toolbox. And I think it's very necessary. Yeah.
perfect. Well, let's talk about that after this call because
All right.
okay. Thank you so much. I'm just going to complete the recording.